Hey guys, Poppy back in today, and it's time for another ranking video. It's been a while, so I thought I'd bite off one of the bigger networks by Mattel back in the day, and that is the Action Network. Actually, it's the biggest one with 13 different games, although there's some debate, maybe 15, maybe 16. But anyway, we're going to look at 13 of these games here today, Action Network, so stick around. We'll be right back and rank them all. As most of you probably know, Mattel used to divide their games into different networks. You had the Sports Network, you had the Space Network, etc., etc. One of the largest ones they had that was kind of a catch-all was called the Action Network. Now, remember I mentioned just a second ago a Space Network? Before they ever decided to do a Space Network game, they had the Action Network first. And that's why I'm going to talk about the first two games that I have here from the Action Network, and they are Space Armada and Space Battle. Now, these were originally done and put out very early in the Action Network, but later on we're moved over to the Space Network, and I've covered these games already when I did and ranked the 5 different Space Network games. So I'm not going to look at either one of these. This one, basically, Space Armada, is the same game as the other, and this one actually is a little bit easier. It's like one level easier than the Blue Box Space Network version of Space Battle. So I guess I would probably give it about the same ranking, but it may be a little bit lower just because it doesn't give you as difficult of a game. It's very, very easy to beat this game at the most difficult level, where it's much more challenging in the actual Space Network version. So anyway, that's the first two games, but let's look at actually one of the Action Network games, and the very first one I'm going to look at, man, it doesn't get any better than this right here. It is Advanced Dungeons and Dragons Cartridge. And yes, cartridge is part of the title because TSR done handed it. This came out in 1982. I can remember getting it for at my brother-in-law's house. He got it for Christmas of 1982, and one of our favorite games back at the time. Man, that was a really prime year, let me tell you, 1982 for Mattel and television games. But this one we had waited for a long time. A lot of people know it now as either Crown of Kings or more popularly as Cloudy Mountain, because the second AD&D game come out for the system, and sort of a third with Tower of Doom. But Treasure of Retirement had Advanced Dungeons and Dragons Treasure of Retirement, so everybody wanted to add a name onto this. So without the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons name, it's just called Cloudy Mountain. So people absolutely love this game. You know, it's great action. It had the template of the different the overworld, where you could move around and go into different types of dungeons to get different items, to work your way across to the mountain itself, where you could find the 2 pieces of the crown. And man, it's an absolutely fantastic game. It's still played a lot to this day. Yeah, one of the absolute best games on the system, frankly. I was rather surprised when this wasn't judged by the overall community in the Intellivision podcast to be the #1 game, but it was awfully close. I think it was #2. And I can't help but give this game right here, man, it's one of my all-time favorites. This is definitely an S rating. Next up, we have Armor Battle, which, of course, back then, Combat was out for the Atari. It was the pack-in, so it had to have a tank game. Every system had to have a tank game, right? And this was Mattel's version, and it's kind of interesting in different regards. Graphically, it was quite a bit better than the Atari version, but and also like the Atari version, it was only 2 players. You could only play this game with two players. Now, I did this game earlier in the 125. Actually, it's episode number 4 of the 125. So if you want to know more about this game and the programming and different gameplay and such, check out my episode, or my 125 on it. It's episode number 4. There'll be a link down below in the description. But this is a game that we had very early. It's one of the first ones we got back in 1980, I think it was, before we even had the system. 2 weeks before we got the system, we were waiting for it to come in the mail, and it didn't come for 2 weeks after we picked these games up in Bangor, Maine. But anyway, when we did finally start playing games, this isn't one we found we went back to a whole lot, because it was sort of slow. Yes, it was fun for a while for 2 players only, but it really wasn't an action game, and it didn't hold our attention all that long. So check out my full rating and full take on the game, again, in the episode of the 125. But for here, I'm going to give Armor Battle a D ranking. Next up, we have another game that I've done in the 125, episode 8. Check it out. And this is a game that I we didn't have back when I was a kid. Never had played this game until recent years. I remember seeing it on Grandma's Boy, right? Frog Bug. Really interesting game. People kind of love this game. People love the game for the Atari. They call it Frogs and Flies for the Atari. Made, of course, by M Network. And I get very interesting to see how some people say, oh, this Frog Bug is just a copy of Frogs and Flies from the Atari. I said, no, it's the other way around. They took the television games and ported some of them over to the Atari. But anyway, I digress. The day to night way of timing this game is really good. The variety of different bugs, the difficulty, different difficulties you can use in the game are all very good, actually. Very well done. So for a game aimed at children, man, it's just not that bad. I'm going to give this a strong B rating. Here's an infamous game right here, okay? Sharpshot, Rick Reynolds' favorite from the Intellivision Aries podcast for sure. It's rather interesting because it's basically 4 different simple games, again aimed towards children, but it's 4 shooting games put in different premises from the rest of the Intellivision world. You have football, where you try to make a pass with the quarterback, touchdown. There's Space Battle, which is a lot sort of like the what's it called? TV POW version of Space Battle. There's also a submarine shooting game in it, as well as one based on the AD&D game, the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons Cloudy Mountain, where you shoot arrows at different monsters as they try to steal your gold. And you know, it's simplicity, and the fact that it's aimed towards children sort of gives it a very sort of negative connotation. But at the end of the day, you know what?
What?
It did it very well. It wasn't all that bad, really. But still, is it a game that holds people's attention nowadays? No, it's pretty simple. So it's not an F. It's definitely not an F. But I'm going to give Sharpshot, I'm going to rank it as a D. One of the most well-known games to the Intellivision system is Nightstalker. People love this game. It's never been absolutely one of my favorites, but you gotta really appreciate the action and the difficulty. Man, there's some really... It really is a fun game to play. It's got a lot of strategy to it. Trying to run around the maze, picking up the guns as you fire all your bullets. The things that this one lacks to me are really taken care of in Intelligent Vision, David Hartley's version of Miss Nightstalker, because it has different mazes. The maze is always the same in this one. The robots are always in the same order. The number of bullets you get every time you pick up the gun is always 6 in this one. It varies that a little bit. And just little things, little improvements like that were made. So check out Miss Nightstalker. But the original Nightstalker, it's loved by so many people. But I cannot give it an S. Because it's just never, ever was, even back in the day, one of my absolute favorite games. So it might be a little bit of a personal bias. But I'm going to give Nightstalker, I'm going to give it an A rating. And now it's not in the arcade network, right? We always said, why isn't LockaChase in the arcade network? Well, they hadn't made the arcade network at that time, so it just got put into the action network. So LockaChase, famous arcade game, another game that I've covered in the 125. There's lots of good stories behind this game right here. Check that out. It's episode 14 of the 125, where I talk about the programming, the improvements, etc., etc. And a lot more has been done with this game in recent years as well. The story behind it was they tried to make it with 4K. It's just almost uncontrollable, so they got bumped up to 6K, which was big bucks at the time. But it still had control difficulty. So there's an 8K version kicking around out there, which never got released. It was produced by Mattel back in the day, but it never got released on cartridges. Yeah, okay, on and on. And there's so many more. There's so many more versions, modern day versions of this game, which make it so much better as well. But Maze game, you know, it was an answer to Pac-Man, right? It was an answer to Pac-Man for Mattel, and it's a good game. And people do love this game as well. Me, not so much. And you know, with all the different versions that are out there now, I just don't see much of a reason to want to play this original Mattel 6K version anymore. So I'm going to rank this one. I'm going to rank it as a C. Alright, so Sea Battle. Sea Battle is a game that is almost synonymous with the Intellivision system. It's one of the most common games out there. Everybody seemed to have a copy of Sea Battle, like Armor Battle, Space Battle, Sea Battle. They all sort of went with the Intellivision. Now, first of all, the big setback for this one, The biggest drawback it has is it is 2 players only. It had 8 different ships. You could put out squadrons of 3 ships or down to just 1 if you wanted. And you could have, what, up to 4 or 3 squadrons on the, well, not squadron way to put it, but whatever, groups of ships out on the screen. The map was always the same in the game, which was a bit of a drawback. But then again, at that day and age, we really didn't expect any different. And this was also a game which had a pretty steep learning curve. So it was very difficult to play a game against somebody and not be sort of biased. Because you could, if you really knew how to play this game and how to take advantage of the different ships, or the strategies, mines, etc., you really, a novice had a hard time keeping up with you. But that being said, it's still a fantastic game. Back in the day, it was amazing what this game could do. So little drawbacks being 2-player only, little drawbacks being static mazes and such. But yeah, I'm gonna rank Sea Battle. It's lower than I expected, but I'm gonna rank it as a B. Now here's a game that we didn't have back in the day. I'd heard a lot about it, but it just didn't seem appealing to us back at the time. My brother-in-law was interested in this game. He'd rather play Sea Battle, right? Sharpshot. And I've only played it in recent years. G-Wen's show made this game back in the day, her only game that she made for the Intellivision, and what a masterpiece it was. Sharpshot, right? I could play it now and thoroughly enjoy it. I play it quite a bit. I like Dave Harley's version, which is based upon time, a little bit better. Sharpshot 2, check that one out in the ROM's vault if you can on Intellivision, or play the original, because this is a game that you still can put in at any given moment and have a lot of fun with. What would I rank it? Remember, this one had to catch me just in the last couple of years. You know, I'm going to rank Sharpshot a solid A. Now, another game I didn't have back when I was a kid. We did have most of them, it seemed, but just there was a few that we didn't. Especially a common one like this, Snafu. I like to think of it as like the Tron light cycles, right? Except for this predates the Tron movie by quite a bit, by 3 or 4 years. So it's definitely not that, but maybe the Tron light cycles were based upon Snafu. Who knows? Although there were other games like this as well, so I don't believe this was the absolute first maze-like game like that. But I find this game fun. In 1 player. 2 player would be even better, head to head. You know, the option to do that would be, I would think, quite a bit better. But at the end of the day, there's some fun to be had here for a very simple game, and the music is absolutely amazing. So I'm going to rank Snafu, even though I didn't have it back in the day, I'm going to give it a solid C rating. Now, the last one of the Action Network games that I've done already in the 125, I think it was episode 17, Sub Hunt, was a game that we look forward to very much. It was being announced earlier in 1982, I think it was. It was coming out in the catalogs and we hadn't seen it. My brother-in-law just loved these war games. Sea Battle was so much fun, and this was sort of dubbed a little bit like promoted as a 1-player Sea Battle, which it kind of was, right? And we got this game and played it a lot. Is it repetitive? Yes, somewhat, but it was the first game that ever put you in the behind the periscope with a submarine to go attack other ships. So it was so much fun for us here on the Intellivision. Again, take a look at the episode of the 125 on it. Link will be down below. And it doesn't get any better than the music that ends this game. So, you know, I'm going to have to rank Sub Hunt as a solid A. Next up, we got Triple Action. It's sort of different because Triple Action, 3 games in 1, right? But when people think of Triple Action, they almost always think of just 1 game, and that's the biplanes game that's in it. 2-player only game, but man, it was fantastic. The physics that they had flying those planes around, how you could stall out your plane and loop-de-loop and regain control to keep from hitting the ground. Plus you had that balloon which took off and you could shoot as well as your opponent to get points. Really ingenious the way they come up with the different aspects of this game, which hadn't been seen before. Now the other 2 games in this are the car, the auto racing one, as well as the tank one that's very similar to Atari Combat. Nothing real revolutionary there. You could play the car one, say 1 player. You couldn't really play the biplane. You couldn't play the tank one 1 player, or really the biplane ones either, although there's many times that I just fly around and practice stalling and regaining control and taking out the balloon. So you would play, surprisingly, people played a lot of that biplanes as 1 player. Again, Is this a great game? Well, Biplanes is a great game. The other two are just kind of But just on the heels of that fantastic Biplanes alone, I'm going to rank Triple Action as a B. Now we get into the Tron games, and the first one I want to look at is Tron Maze-a-Tron. Didn't have it back in the day, and I never really figured that out because we were kind of Tron nuts. We loved watching Tron. I get Solar Sailor. I loved Tron Solar Sailor back in the day, as difficult as that game was. But we just never picked up this one. And again, it's rather got a pretty high learning curve, let me tell you that. I've loved the new version that's on Tron Anthology. It's available from Intellivision. I believe it's called Tron Maze-a-Tron, or rebooted or something like that. But try that one out if you get the chance to go to the ROMs vault and pick up a copy from Dave Harley. It is a lot of improvements, like with all of his games, to this original version. But where does the original version stand? Well, there's a reason that we didn't get it. As we heard, it was very complicated and difficult to play. Didn't have an ending like the other ones did. I mean, Deadly Disc didn't have an ending either, but still, this one just sort of seemed like you should be able to beat the MCP and then be done with it, right? But you couldn't. Anyway, Russ Half just made a really complex game. But what am I going to rank this one as? I played the new one, then I turned around and tried to play this original one, and I really can't give it anything that high. So I'm going to rank Tron Maze-a-Tron. Sorry, Tron fans, it's a D. And we're down to the last game. Started with an S, right? Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. Well, don't want to be too much of a spoiler here, but this game is right there neck and neck with AD&D as being my all-time favorite on the Intellivision. Tron Deadly Disc was wonderful. I can't imagine a better single-screen action game, especially back from 1982. It was wonderful. We loved it. It brought the disc battles of the movie to life, and I only ever had one complaint about the game. Well, I have more than that probably. With the recognizers were a little difficult, although with a little bit of practice you get pretty good at getting those as well. Why was Tron red and all the enemies blue when it was the opposite in the movie? But listen, that doesn't take away from the game at all. Absolutely, totally ranking it an S. Well, guys, that's it for today's ranking video. That's the Action Network. Only a couple more networks to go for the Intellivision to rank. We'll move on to do some other systems as well. These ranking videos are a lot of fun. Coco likes them too, eh? Can't you tell? But anyway, guys, thanks for spending a little bit of time with us here today. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe because it really does help the channel. And we will see you in the next video. You take care.
Papa Pete, the old ass gamer. Papa Pete, the old ass gamer. If you haven't grown up by the age of...
I'm Rick Reynolds of the Intellivision Aries podcast, and you're watching Papa Pete, the old guy gamer.